What's up, everybody? Welcome to RealGM Radio. I've got Mike Shearer from Basketball Poetry on today to talk about the Knicks winning the NBA Cup and whether or not we buy them as legit championship contenders. And then we're going to debut a new segment called Good Take. I'll explain the rules when we get there, but I think you're really going to enjoy it. But first, I want to tell you about the Winfield game. If you love sports trivia, roster deep dives, and that aha moment when everything clicks, you need to check out the Winfield game. It's a free daily sports puzzle covering the NFL, NBA, and MLB, where your goal is simple. Guess the mystery all-star or Pro Bowler in 10 tries or fewer. Each guess gives you real feedback. Teams and cities they played for, the decade they peaked, their position, and even major honors like MVPs, All-Pro, All-NBA, or Gold Gloves. The trick? The smartest guesses aren't always the biggest stars. Savvy players use journeymen to unlock clues fast and narrow the field. And now it's not just solo play. With group leaderboards, you can compete with friends, coworkers, fantasy leagues, or entire fan communities. Track today's best scores, best average, and longest streak, bragging rights absolutely included. RealGM even has its own Winfield group that you can join today. So if you think you really know your sports history, from 90s rosters to modern legends, the Winfield game is your daily challenge. Play free, play smart, and prove it. Knicks win the NBA Cup. Mike Shearer is next. Here's the podcast. All right, really excited for today's show, but before we get into our news segment, I want to talk about the Knicks winning the NBA Cup, Mike. They're playing really good basketball right now. They're 16-4 since starting the year 2-3. They've won 17 of their last 21 games if we include that Cup final. Right now, they're 4th in net rating. They're 2nd in offensive rating, and they're up to 11th in defensive rating. But before we zoom out, let's just start with that game against the Spurs. Mike, what stood out to you?
It was so fun. I hope that people appreciated it at home. Like, I thought the quality of play was super high. I thought, it was nice to see two teams at pretty close to full health really duking it out, right? Like, Wembanyama was obviously on a minutes limit, and he had dealt with, I believe, the death of his grandmother earlier in the day, which came out this morning. So, that was a distraction. And Deuce McBride wasn't there for the Knicks. But other than that, it was like fun to just see teams throwing haymakers. I thought it was a blast. The story was the Knicks bench mob. And kind of related to that, I think, was the Mike Brown effect, right? I couldn't help but notice that the Knicks spent a big part of the third quarter and a big part of the fourth quarter with 2 and sometimes 3 small guards on the court at once in Tyler Kolek and Jordan Clarkson and Jalen Brunson. And it was hard to imagine a, Tom Thibodeau team doing something like that. So, but really the game turned because of Mitchell Robinson's offensive rebounds. And this is something that I think, I'd highlighted in a preview earlier. 10 offensive rebounds, 9 came in the 12 minutes he shared with Victor Wembanyama. 1 came in the 6 minutes when Wembanyama was off and Luke Cornett was in there in his place. And I think that, if you're looking for the reasons why the Knicks were able to pull it out, it was a mixture of the bench's offensive rebounds for Robinson and then these kind of like incendiary scoring and steady defense, unexpectedly steady defense from Kolek and Clarkson with these bench guard units.
It was a back and forth game for the first 3 quarters, I would say. There was definitely a push and pull going on. The Victor Wembanyama minutes never felt as impactful as they did against Oklahoma City. Like you mentioned, there was some off-the-court stuff going on with him, a death in the family, and you don't want to overanalyze how much that has to do with him because you don't want to start psychoanalyzing players. But at the same time, he just, for whatever reason, wasn't as impactful as maybe we expected him. He's also, still on that minutes restriction, the injury. Like, he played his first game in several weeks against Oklahoma City and then his second game in 4 days against the Knicks. So maybe that also had something to do with it. But the game flipped at the start of that fourth quarter. 3 straight offensive rebounds on 3 straight possessions for Mitchell Robinson. And it felt like it was the Knicks game from there on out, that they, through 3 quarters, it took one of the teams a while to establish sort of dominance over the other. And to me, it was those first 3 possessions of the fourth quarter where Mitchell Robinson and the Knicks established dominance over the Spurs. It just felt like that was the haymaker. And obviously the rest of the game went on. Victor Wembanyama checked back into the game. But Mitchell Robinson was such a difference maker in that fourth quarter. And I think that raises a lot of interesting questions about the Spurs. I think it raises interesting things about the Knicks and how good they can be when at full health. But this Knicks team is playing really good basketball right now. And with all due respect to the Detroit Pistons, I think we have to consider the Knicks right now the favorites in the East the way they're playing.
Yeah, we might touch upon that a little bit further on too, but I do want to stop and point out that I think New York and Houston have sort of figured out that the NBA's current market inefficiency is offensive rebounds, right? And they're the two that have really leaned into that identity. And we've seen that it's had success in the playoffs with like the Knicks run last year to the conference championship. And we've certainly seen it in the regular season success and the offensive success that the Rockets and the Knicks have had this year. So the rest of the league is starting to catch up to that. Like league-wide offensive rebounding is going up. People are realizing that like, hey, just because you're sending guys to crash the glass doesn't necessarily mean you have to sacrifice your transition defense, which is one of the major reasons why it had never been popular for the last 10, 15 years. But the fact that the Knicks have kind of figured that out, and Robinson has a better offensive rebounding percentage than many teams in the league by himself. He's on pace to set the record historically. Think of all the great rebounders the league has had over the decades, and Robinson right now is like heads and shoulders above what would have been historical second place. So I think, and Steven Adams would also be setting the record for the Rockets if it wasn't for Mitchell Robinson. So it's cool to see that these teams, the Knicks in this case, kind of like figure out that like, hey, there's this weapon that nobody else is really using. Let's see how sharp we can make it. And then also surround it with all these other cool things, right? Like if Robinson's on the floor, they can still score in the traditional way with the Brunson Towns pick and roll. But the fact that they can toggle between those two identities is super interesting to me.
Yeah, the Knicks are doing a lot of interesting things in terms of trying to win that possession battle. And years ago, it was Steph Curry and the three-point shooting revolution and all that. And that was how you can actually get an extra point. Then teams started to realize, oh, wait, we don't have Steph Curry. As much as we might want to try to have a facsimile of this guy, we just don't have this guy. So how else can we find that extra point? Well, that's getting really hard. Then you've kind of got the James Harden revolution with, okay, let's just do it with volume. And then teams, I think, started to finally figure out, well, it's not really about getting the extra point. It's about winning the possession battle more than anything. And so there was a long time where teams were not offensive rebounding in order to get back in transition. And then they realized, and Fred Katz did a great piece about this on The Athletic, that the data supports that even if we offensive rebound, we're not going to give up as much transition. They actually don't have anything to do with each other, because if we offensive rebound at such a rate that is a problem for the opponent, then they have to send people to the boards too. And also you have the way that you can offensive rebound in terms of pinning guys against the baseline, making sure that they're not leaking out or getting out in transition as quickly. So there's a lot of stuff going into that. But what's interesting about what the Knicks are doing here is that they're doing the offensive rebounding thing while also doing the three-point shooting thing. And I thought that this was a very interesting game in terms of the Victor Wembanyama matchup, because it felt like when Mitchell Robinson was in there, he's positioned on the baseline in that dunker spot area. And you wrote about this in Basketball Poetry. So aggressively under the basket that Victor Wembanyama basically had to stay there. And that's an interesting way to kind of attempt to neutralize Wemby a little bit, because where Wemby is so effectful and dangerous is when he's getting out super quick, when he's 5 or 6 feet away and he's able to get out and block your shot anyway or contest that shot anyway. But if he's stationed, if he's glued to you under that dunker spot because he can't move because you're a lob threat or you're an offensive rebounding threat, it kind of takes away all of his roaming ability. And then on the flip side with Cat, he's just such a great spacer that it pushes Wembanyama to another side of the floor, where if you kind of organize yourself on the opposite side of where Cat is and then where Wemby is, you can kind of just neutralize him in that way. So right. I thought this showed some interesting. I thought Mike Brown schemed up some really interesting ways of how to attack Victor Wembanyama, or not even attack him, but blunt some of his impact.
Yeah, and I think to flip it to the Spurs for a second, I think if they had to redo this game, there's two things that Coach Mitch Johnson maybe should have done differently, both relating to Mitchell Robinson. And it's crazy we're talking so much about Robinson, who played all of 18 minutes, right? But that's how important he was in this game.
Yep.
But one, you didn't see any maul of Mitchell, right? We've seen other teams who just throw up their hands and be like, we can't handle this guy. Let's get him off the court, start hacking him until, he's shooting like 22% on free throws this year, I think, which is interesting because Robinson really is about to, if the season ended today, he would set 2 records: worst free throw percentage, best offensive rebounding percentage. But like teams have weaponized that against him. We didn't see the Spurs really do that at all. And the other thing was, and I was shocked by this, we didn't see any Luke Cornett Wembanyama minutes, not to my recollection anyway. And, French Vanilla has had some success playing so far this season. Cornette is the exact kind of like beefy guy that you'd want out there, I would have thought, to combat Robinson on the boards. And that also frees up Wembanyama to do what he does best without having to worry about boxing out. He can chase blocks. He can deter drivers. He can do all that stuff if Cornette's there too. Basically just like hold Robinson in place, do all those dirty rebounding tricks NBA players do where they lock your elbows so you can't jump. They hold your wrists so you can't get off the ground. Somebody had to do that to Robinson and nobody did. And I think if the Spurs could do it all over again, they would try at least one and maybe both of those things.
I think that's exactly what they're going to kick themselves over when they watch the tape of this game. It's, wow, we really probably could have just put Cornette with Wemby out there for 2 or 3 minutes down the stretch and maybe flip this game a little bit. And it was a relatively close game, right? Like the Knicks obviously
Much
pulled
closer
away
than the
towards
final
the end.
score. Yeah.
The other thing that stood out to me about the Spurs was I was really interested going into this game how San Antonio's defenders would handle the Knicks guards and playmakers on the perimeter, and then vice versa. Could the Knicks also handle De'Aaron Fox and Dylan Harper and Stephon Castle? Stephon Castle looked great in this game. De'Aaron Fox was spraying the ball all over the place. He was great. Dylan Harper had his moments. It didn't matter, right? Because they were able to neutralize the big guy. They were able to neutralize Wemby. And I guess if you're the Knicks, you're deciding that you can kind of live with that. It wasn't a great game for Mikal Bridges, who was dealing with something apparently in that game. OG Anunoby was great. But what you said earlier, they were able to play 3 guards in this game. And San Antonio's wings weren't able to do anything about it. They weren't able to take advantage of any perimeter size mismatch or anything like that. And I came away from this game, strangely enough, thinking that the Spurs are a little bit thin on the wing, and that if they were going to make a move, that might be the move. Like, I know that they're like, should they do Giannis and all this stuff? Like, take that, put it away. And according to the reporting, that I'm interested in Giannis anyway. But they can kind of maybe use another forward in this group.
Yeah, for sure. I think what you'd really want is just like a slightly better version of Harrison Barnes, as one of my friends said to me earlier today, right? Like Harrison Barnes is like doing all the things he can to the best of his abilities, but you saw today he only played, I think, 24 minutes. He went 0 for 4 from deep, was not able to compete on the boards, couldn't compete with New York's physicality at all. And you just want like a beefier version of Harrison Barnes, because the shooting he provides is still super valuable, particularly given sort of like the on and off shooting of, Castle and Harper, more off than on, if we're being honest. Mm-hmm. So you do need his spacing, but you also need somebody who can just be a little bit more stout in the post on occasion. And I think you're right. I think that's exactly what they need.
I would be looking at New Orleans, and I'd be trying to get either Trey Murphy or Harrison Barnes or Herb Jones. That to me seems like the kind of move that the Spurs could pull off without giving up all of the valuable assets. If they can get one of those guys or a player like that, that feels like it could be the kind of difference maker. Because I still think with that, after that win against Oklahoma City, and again remembering that Wemby is not 100%, this is still a team that I think is on the outer fringe of contenders in the Western Conference. One kind of move, maybe 2 moves to get another shooter in there, perhaps. That's the kind of thing that I think could move them up into that tier right behind Oklahoma City in the West.
Yeah, and they're close. The ceiling, I think, was proven in the OKC game, right? It's how consistently can they hit that, though, and they have a lot riding on kind of shaky shooters, because I think the defense is always going to be really good between Wembanyama and Cornette. And for as much as they got beasted on the offensive glass today, there's really only 2 teams where you're worried about that. And one, Houston, could be a very real concern in the playoffs, right? But they're not going to see New York again in a meaningful setting unless a miracle happens and they both make it to the finals. So I'm a little less concerned about that, I think, from a matchup like over the course of a full season perspective. I think the defense will be great, but yeah, they got to figure out a way to get just a little bit more consistent offense, I think. And perhaps that just comes from greater chemistry with De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama, who are still trying to feel each other out. I think, Castle and Wembanyama are a much better duo right now on offense than Fox and Wembanyama, and there's definitely room to grow there. So it could just be internal improvement, but we'll see. If you're the Spurs, you don't really want to rush things too much, particularly since I think Castle and Harper have both been better from the jump of the season than at least I personally expected. I've been really impressed with both those guys. But they're good enough that you can definitely see them talking themselves into like a medium-sized move, right? Like, well, we'll see. It'll be a fun trade deadline for sure.
I think about what Dallas did a couple years ago, PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. Let's just go get a couple of, Pat Riley likes to call it shields and swords. Let's just grab a couple of weapons for the stretch run here. It doesn't have to be something that completely upends what you're doing here. But all right, NBA Cup is done. Are you a fan of it?
I'm a big fan, and I think this is definitely something that is more appealing to hardcore NBA junkies like you and me, right? And the fans who have League Pass. If you have League Pass, you probably love the NBA Cup, and if you're somebody who tunes in for the national games, you're probably still trying to figure out what the big deal is. And I think that's okay. I think a thing like this is going to take time to embed itself in NBA culture. The most important thing is, do the players and coaches care? And we have consistently seen for 3 years now that the star players play more minutes, coaches are making more tactical adjustments. Like, this is a thing that, like, people want the money. That's really what it comes down to, right? Like, the cup itself, people aren't really sure what that means in the long term, but you're going to throw a few $100,000 in front of people. It doesn't matter how much they're making. They are going to want to go get that money. And I think if the quality of games remains high, if the incentives remain appealing to the players and the coaches, eventually like fan interest will continue to grow. And this year I did see a little bit of it. I do think that fans started to get a little bit more excited about it. So I think it's moving in the right direction. It was always going to appeal to someone like me. I love the NBA. I want more stakes. I want more awards. I wish we, instead of handing out 6 awards at the end of the year, we handed out 16. I love having things to win. I love having reasons to care about week-to-week stuff. For everybody else, I think it will get there, but it will take time. And this was a good step in the right direction.
So not to step on our segment that we're about to do, but one of the takes I almost brought to the table was the 65 game limit sucks. And one of the reasons is we already know who's not winning MVP this year.
Right.
Based on games played earlier in the season. If you miss a couple weeks earlier in the year, it's basically you're done. Like your chances of winning MVP are kaput. So for somebody like Giannis right now, we don't even get to have the conversation. We don't even get to have the debate. I'm not saying he would win the award, but you're taking now the debate away from us for the next few months that I thought would at least be interesting in terms of winning the award, or did he play enough games, or just finishing on the ballot, right? Because we also forget it's not just the people that win this award, it's also people that place for this award that we also remember, right? We remember second place finishes for MVP. I mean, not really, but like you can go back on Basketball Reference and look at it and be like, oh, okay, like that's interesting. Blake Griffin finished how high in MVP once? Okay. And you think about that kind of goes on the side resume a little bit, but
I would counterpoint that a little bit actually. And this is, just to like you said, segue into what we were going to do anyway. Like I actually don't mind the 65 games limit in that way as much as I thought I would. I do think we've seen that, like, if you're playing fewer than 65 games historically, you just aren't likely to have qualified for too many of the major awards. And there have been exceptions, and it's certainly in an environment where players are playing fewer games than they used to, like, maybe one guy wins it because he played 68 and somebody misses out because they played, 63, right? And you start to quibble about like, well, where do you really cut it off? But it does provide a goal for players that I think that they anchor towards and they work towards, which isn't a bad thing. Not that I think players are sitting out games that they don't need to sit out. I think that argument has always been overblown. Like, players want to play when they're healthy. And if they're not, they're not going to go out there and try to like drag themselves up and down the court very often, because that's going to do long-term damage, not just to like their reputation and stuff, but just kind of their long-term trajectory. You don't want to be, the guy with the lingering calf injury for 9 months or whatever. It's better to get it right in the beginning. So it is a bummer.
That too is with Tyler Herro, for example, he missed exactly 17 games at the start of the year before he made his return. And you could say that maybe he rushed it because since then he's been out with this toe injury. He's sort of been in and out of the lineup. Now he's not going to qualify for 65 games anyway, and he wanted at least to play the 65 to have a chance at All-NBA. Was he going to be All-NBA this year? Probably not. But he wanted to at least not eliminate himself after the first month or two of the season. And so I don't know. I don't want to say he rushes back, but he comes back pretty early, earlier than what this injury typically dictates. And he's missed some games since then with a lingering toe injury that's been problematic, and it's kind of still like this pain that he's been dealing with. But hey, whatever. It's the awards. I'm with you. I'm here for it. I was initially a skeptic of the NBA Cup, only because I don't like being told what to care about, and I am sort of unique. I'm just naturally contrarian at heart. And I can't say that I noticed the difference the first 2 years. I have noticed the difference in play this year. And I think some of that is the scheduling. They did tweak it a little bit to give a little bit more rest before these cup games. I think that matters. I also think that what we're quietly seeing right now is teams finding ways not to use the slippery courts with the colors on it.
Right.
Was it the Orlando Magic were like, oh, it got damaged in storage. Okay, prove it. I want to see that court. I want to see that court. I want to see the damage. I want to see it before I believe you. The Lakers just said we're not going to do it anymore. Our players don't like it. They just we make us, and the league is like, we can't. And so I think my prediction, and I have no intel on this, but my prediction based on how things are going, this was the last year of the super colorful courts. I think we get some sort of adjustment next year on it.
I think you're right. I'll be disappointed. I love the courts. My favorite kind of court is the one that makes my eyes bleed. So give me more of the, last year Chicago Bulls red. Give me more of these bright yellows. Like I like it. We watch so much basketball. I crave novelty. I love it. I want to see something new every time I turn on the TV. And the courts, whatever complaints you have of courts, and of course I never want it to impact player safety. But like just purely aesthetically, I really enjoyed flipping it on and being like, oh my God, what have the Timberwolves done to my eyes? Like I loved it. I'm all in on that. So I'll be sad when they go away, but I do think you're right.
It's like when somebody takes a camera and the lens is a little too close, and then you just start seeing dots afterwards. Like that's what it came on coming away from like these neon colors. I was like, oh, I can't see my wife after these games. Like I have no idea what's happening. All right, we're going to move on to our new segment. It's called Good Take, and it's brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the holiday season, the best time of year for sports, bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once, and while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which games to watch, there's one place where it feels good to be right. It's Prize Picks. It's simple to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. On Prize Picks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose the flex play, where you can get paid even on if one of your picks misses. And if you want the bigger payouts, go for the power play. No matter how you play, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test. It's now available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. Prize Picks puts their players first, so all withdrawals are fast and secure. Prize Picks accepts most major payment methods, making deposits into your account quick and easy this season. Join millions of users. Sign up for America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Speaking of being right, Mike, this is a new segment called Good Take. Here's how it works. We each prepared a couple of takes coming into the episode, and we're going to share them with each other. That's the segment. Here's the part I did not tell you.
Oh.
Only the person with the best initial take will get the and one and a chance to share his second take.
All right.
And that is how the game works. So we both get to make our first takes. We both have to make them good. Mike, I'm a generous host. You go first.
Oh, the pressure. Okay, yeah, because I did have a few different prepared. Now you're making me pick my favorite child.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's go with this one because I think it's maybe a little bit more interesting for like long-term ramifications. Which is, I think by the start of next season, Cade Cunningham will be the 6th best player in the NBA, which is very specific. And so I want to explain some reasoning here, which is the big 4 are the big 4, right? Giannis, Luka, Jokic, and the other big 4 guy I'm forgetting.
Shea.
Thank you, Shea. Yes, reigning MVP, destroyer of worlds, Shea. Yes, yeah. So you have those 4 guys. I think I'm pretty confident saying that, like, if you asked everybody around the league, Wembanyama would be seen as the 5th best player in the NBA. That leaves a host of kind of scoring guards battling for sort of 6 through 10, in my opinion. And this is going to be sort of down ballot MVP guys like Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell, former MVP Stephen Curry, Anthony Edwards, and Cade Cunningham. And I think that's a pretty clear 6 through 10. Maybe you'd argue you'd want to throw in somebody like Maxey or Durant or somebody like that. But I feel comfortable saying that those are probably the top 10 guys right now. Yeah, Cunningham is not the best guy right this second. I think you could rank, and maybe I'd flip that on you. I'd say, who would you think is the best out of that 5 right now? Who would you pick from that group of Mitchell, Edwards, Curry, Cunningham, and Brunson?
I would go Brunson. His
MVP.
tough shot making is just next level. It's an absolute superpower, and he's got the track record and what he's got going on with the Knicks right now. It's worth respect. But to your point, Cunningham's 24 years old. He's got physical abilities or physical attributes that Jalen Brunson clearly does not. What's interesting to me about this is we went from Cade Cunningham, first round pick. We all like him. We'll see if you can put it all together to now. Is he the next great young guard and not Anthony Edwards? And I think that's a real conversation to be had. I think Cunningham has jumped by a lot of different guards in the NBA right now. And in terms of the young guards in the league, like LaMelo, see ya. Ja Morant, see ya. Trae Young, see ya. Even somebody like Tyrese Maxey. I think Cade Cunningham is just better than him. Tyrese Maxey is awesome, and he might also be a top 10 player right now. But yeah, he's in that mix right now with Ant.
Yeah, you can totally, depending on the night, you could pick any 5 of these guys that I mentioned, right? Like you look and like they're all putting up, pretty much all of them are putting up pretty efficient, scoring years, huge scoring years, nearly 30 points a game for all of them. They're all at or above 60% true shooting, except for Cunningham, because his 3-pointer has somewhat deserted him. And I think that's the major knock against him. But Cunningham is also the best passer by a mile of that group, I think. He's a triple-double threat, partially due to his size, partially due to his place in like sort of the Pistons ecosystem in a way that none of these other players are. But like, I also think the box score stuff, which is very impressive for all these guys, doesn't quite do Cunningham justice. And I always think about a quote that Miles Turner had about Tyrese Halliburton when Miles Turner wrote a piece in the Players Tribune. I think it was like halfway through last year, talking about like his basketball journey. But something he said about Tyrese Halliburton was that Tyrese Halliburton gave him basketball free will. And for the first time in his career, Turner wasn't being told what not to do, but was instead told to, quote unquote, flow towards what's possible. And I think there's a lot of that with Cunningham and his Pistons teammates, because you look at who else is on the roster. It's a lot of defense first guys, very few other creators, very few reliable shooters. A lot of the time, his second best floor spacer running next to him after Duncan Robinson is Tobias Harris, who's like a career 35% 3-point shooter on reluctant volume. And yet the Pistons offense is very good when Cade's on the floor. They keep winning games. They're first in the East. Not that many people saw that coming. The Pistons have a better record than any of the teams of the 5 players I just mentioned, and I'm not sure that they have the most talented supporting cast. There is something about Cunningham that I think raises up the overall team's level of play in a way that doesn't necessarily show up in traditional box score metrics. Some of the advanced metrics are all over the place. It's still early enough in the season that the advanced metrics haven't really settled in yet, so I don't put too much stock in them yet. But I think the Pistons are primed for a big playoff run, and I think we will see Cunningham really shine this year, and he'll go into next year as sort of like a maybe not consensus, because this is a tight-knit group, and a lot's going to change depending on what happens in May and June. But I think Cunningham has a real shot to be the 6th best player in the NBA by next offseason.
We had a clear top 3. That became a clear top 4 when Shea entered that group. We're inching toward a place where we have a clear top 5 with Victor Wembanyama. He's kind of just mentioned in there now. We could expand this into a place where we have a clear top 6. And like I said before, ask people a year ago, if we did have a top 6, who would be that? Who would be the last 2 people in? People would say Wemby, who's already kind of in there, and then probably Ant. And Cunningham has a chance to be that other guy. To your point, too, especially in the Eastern Conference, it would not shock me at all if Cade Cunningham was the best player in every playoff series that the Pistons played through the Eastern Conference part of the bracket. If depending on however far they went, like let's say they did go all the way to the NBA Finals, would it shock you if Cunningham outplayed Giannis in a playoff series? I don't think that could shock you based on how Cade is playing this year. It would be moderately surprising, but it wouldn't be like Sam Hauser being better than Giannis. It would be like so could he be better than Jalen Brunson in a playoff series? 100%. So I think you're onto something here. There's something interesting that happens, I think, with some young players who start making that leap. It's, okay, have you nailed the fundamentals? Do you know how to play to the speed of the NBA game? Do you finally look ahead of the speed, where a lot of young players kind of come in looking behind, right? And they always talk about the speed of the NBA game. Okay, you've gotten past that part. Do you understand the playbook? Do you understand your coach? Consistency with the coaching staff obviously helps, all that stuff. All right, you know the X's and O's. You know all of that stuff now. You understand the rules. You understand the officiating better than ever. And then something else can sometimes happen, and it's that next level. It's playing to the crowd. It's playing with a level of physicality. I like to call them accoutrements. It's just that other stuff that make you an entertainer more than just a basketball player. And Cade has entered that level this year where he's playing with a level of physicality and a level of chutzpah and just like getting his teammates involved. And what's so important about that is not just it's great for us as people who are watching the games and you're seeing all of that from Cade. It's also great for his teammates who want to follow him. Right now, he's exciting and he's got charisma and all that stuff. Right. Once you've got that, now you've kind of entered that next level of star player who is a leader in that locker room and for that team. And I think that's where Cade is right now, and that's also a really big part of this.
Yeah, and he's probably the most well-rounded of all these players, assuming his three-point shot ever comes back to, right? So to your point, he's elevated himself as a leader. I think I do want to pause and say, Coach JB Bickerstaff deserves a lot of credit for getting him to really buy in on the defensive end, because you look back at the tape from his, first year or two in the league, and Cunningham was very, very bad on that end. And part of that's just being young. Like, he would have gotten better anyway. But this is the second superstar now we've seen after Donovan Mitchell, who really elevated his game on the defensive end when Bickerstaff came into town in Cleveland. And I think something about JB just really gets these guys to care about that end. And I think that's super important when we're splitting hairs between, the 12th best guy in the NBA versus the 6th best guy in the NBA. Like, that sort of stuff matters. And the only competition in sort of this bracket for him defensively now is Anthony Edwards. I think Cade might honestly be a little bit better, not necessarily because he's a better on-ball defender, but he's a better off-ball defender. And just given his size, his ability to distribute, I believe in the shot, even though it's, been waxed and waned throughout his career. Like, I think he's at least a threat from outside. So I just think that he has piled on some of these other, accoutrements, as you said. And he's basically the complete package now. And I really look forward to seeing what he can do in springtime basketball.
Also has a signature hairstyle that's important.
Yeah.
And
helps.
It helps. I think maybe to your point, for it to get to consensus, because you and I'm with you. I believe in the jumper. I think it'll get there. It'll improve. It'll be what they need it to be consistently. That's really the big question, though. If you're looking at Cade and, hey, can this guy be top 6, 7 in the NBA? If you answer yes, you're probably a believer that the jumper will come around completely. If you answer no, you're probably a little bit more dubious of that. That's a good first take. I appreciate that.
Nice.
All right,
balls in your court. Check.
Check. My take is that the Cavaliers are going to get over the hump, and we need to stop worrying about them so much. I understand where people are coming from based on the vulnerability that they showed in the playoffs last year. And when I say that they'll be fine and they'll get over the hump, I don't know if that means that they're going to make it to the NBA Finals, which is probably what a Cavs fan would want to hear. I just mean that it's not going to be this bad, and they're going to end up probably at the end of the day one of the top 3 or 4 seeds in the Eastern Conference anyway. But this is more of a vibes thing than anything else. And right now the vibes in Cleveland are really bad. And even after wins, they just don't really seem happy. Fans don't seem happy. The media is like, it feels like something's missing there. I've heard the word, like, they don't use a lot. I've heard the phrase, they don't play with a lot of joy right now. I still have not found the team, as injured as the Cavaliers are and missing as many open threes as this Cavaliers team is missing, that is playing with joy. I still haven't found that team. Show me when you find that team, let me know. I just think that when a team has this much talent and this many injuries, and people are struggling to find out what's going on and throwing out things like they don't play with enough joy or whatever like that, I think the answer is usually is as obvious as it seems. And in this sense, it's probably just the injuries and the fact that they're missing a lot of threes that they were making last year, right? Right now they're 29th in 3-point shooting percentage, 33.9% of their threes this season. They led the league in 3-point shooting percentage last year. Now, they've had injuries. Darius Garland in and out of the lineup. Even when he's been playing, he's not been good. He's not looked good. Max Strus has not played yet this season. It still feels like they're slow rolling his return to the court. But even beyond that, guys are shooting below what we expected. Eventually, I think the 3-point shooting will come around. They'll get healthier. They'll go on a run. And I don't know when the run will be, January, February, March, whatever. But we're going to be doing a podcast at that point and saying something like, oh, wow, look, the Cavs are fine. And I think that's just going to happen.
Yeah, and that run that you're talking about had better come quick, because their next 4 games are 2 against Chicago, 1 more against Charlotte, whom they just lost to in overtime, and 1 against New Orleans. Mm-hmm. So if they don't go at least 3-1 in that stretch, and you really want to go 4-0 there. If you can't go at least 3-1, like my alarm bells are going to be firing everywhere.
Yeah,
right? I'm not going to hear anything else.
This take is either going to age really well or really poorly, and we're going to know in about a week and a half which one it is.
That's exactly right. And the middle of the East is so crowded right now. There's so little separating, kind of like 3 through 9, and the standings are going to look a lot different in a week or so. So to your point, like, I have been burned by the Cavs the last 2 years. I've talked them up a lot. I've been a real big believer in them, and they have consistently disappointed. And so I think I am a little more nervous about this than you are, because you're right. They're not hitting shots as a team, and that should get better. The flip side of that is Donovan Mitchell has been ungodly. Like, he's been so good. And I'm not sure that even if he's playing the best he could possibly play, and they're still sort of like, treading water. They'll get healthier, hopefully, but he probably won't play quite this well for the rest of the year. He has a history of sort of like wearing down, not necessarily like missing a ton of time. Although that has happened before, but like by the time the playoffs roll around, he just looks physically worn out. He plays so physically, he plays so hard. I'm nervous about him carrying this kind of load up for an 82-game season. I also, the Darius Garland thing really makes me nervous too, because like the toe stuff, like it's easy to be like he's playing bad because his toe hurts, and that's true. But it's also true that toe surgery, anything with your toe, doesn't usually go away. Like, the only thing that helps your toe is rest. He's not getting enough of it, and then he keeps coming back, keeps tweaking it, keeps re-injuring it. Like, toe stuff makes me really nervous. We've seen it in careers. before in the past. And I like if Garland can't be sort of like all-star or at least close to all-star level Garland, like this team's ceiling is just so low. Mobley's gotten a lot of hate this year for his play, which I think is a little bit unfair. I think people were maybe a little too high on Mobley last year, and now they're a little bit too low. And like he's still a really good player, but I'm not sure he's ever going to be like. I see a lot of parallels between him and the conversation that's always around Bam Adebayo, right?
Yep.
And to me, those two guys are always so linked together in terms of like they're both good offensive players and fantastic defenders, and people want them to be fantastic offensive players. And I'm not sure that they'll ever quite get to that level that people hope for. So, like, yeah, I just get really nervous. The injuries, there's a lot of injuries, and it's easy to say they'll get healthy, but that's just not the way it works in the NBA. A lot of times, teams that are really injured early on, those things pile on, and then they're never really healthy for the rest of the year. They get injured as the year goes on. So I can't just wave my hands and be like, they'll get healthy and then they'll be good. If they do get healthy, I do think they will be good, but I'm just not convinced that it'll happen. And I'm also really worried about Jared Allen. We didn't mention Jared Allen, but boy, he has not looked like the same impactful player that he was 2 years ago. The slide started last year. It's really reared its head this year, particularly defensively, where I just don't think he's been the same kind of playmaker that we are accustomed to. So if Mobley is about the same as last year, if Garland's way worse, if Allen's worse, and if the bench is an injured mess and they've had one of the least productive benches in the whole NBA because of all their injuries, like there's just not a lot of upside here is what I'm worried about.
There's definitely long-term concerns that I have with Cleveland. And I think we know at this point that Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, Allen isn't the answer long-term for them. Like they're going to have to make some kind of decision on that. Now, Jared Allen, his extension kicks in, so he's starting to start making $30 million next year. He's a quiet trade deadline guy to me. Like, do you try to get out of that early, especially if this next stretch doesn't go the way that you hope? Do you try to get out of that early? I think there's plenty of teams in the league that could be in need of a center, or at least a center swap or something there, right? So that maybe that's a possibility. I also think that you want Strus to come back, but what if he doesn't? You know, again, you're hearing mixed stuff coming out of the Max Strus thing and when his return might come. I would be looking for another three-point shooter if I were them. Could they go get Klay Thompson? That to me seems like a perfect fit, a guy who could be at least sold, hey, go to Cleveland. You could be a difference maker. That can theoretically contend in the Eastern Conference. You're a knockdown three-point shooter with real playoff experience and a playoff resume. That would be really interesting to me if I were the Cavaliers. I also am not sure that DeAndre Hunter has worked out the way that they had hoped. That was a guy that at the trade deadline last year, he should have just walked right into that starting job and never let it go, and that never happened, not even close. Even last year, I was arguing that they kind of lost that trade because of what LeVert was giving the Hawks down the stretch of last season, even though they weren't as important as the Cavaliers. It just doesn't seem like it's been the right fit. Could they swap DeAndre Hunter out for something else too? I think that there's some minor moves that they can make before they have to answer those big questions about Garland and Jared Allen. But yeah, I think we got to be more patient on the Evan Mobley leap. I think we had a tendency to rush it, and because of that, people are low on him, but that's more of a symptom of the expectations than the actual play. He's been good, just not as good, like not top 10 the way that you were hearing out of Cleveland this year. I still just go back to the three-point shooting. I think they're going to make more threes. And when that happens, it'll carry both the offense and defense. And by the way, they're already top 10 in offensive rating and defensive rating. It's not like they've been horrible. They're, they've had some bad meltdowns late in games and stuff like that. The vibes aren't great. I'm not picking them to win the East. I just think it'll be better than what it is right now.
Yeah, see, I did think they were going to win the East pretty handily, which is part of the reason why I'm so upset with sort of what we've seen so far. But I will say, to your point, there are some silver linings, and the three-point shooting is directly tied to the injuries. Strus not being there, not that Strus is a dead-eye shooter per se, like he's always right around that 37%, but he's just so willing to fire, and he's so good moving around and opening up creases and making it easier for everybody else to get their shots off. Sam Merrill has been sort of like alternating between ineffective and injured, and I think he'll be better. You know, Larry Nance has been out. Not that he's necessarily a shooter, but he's a very good screener, and he helps get some of these guys open, and he hasn't been around to do that. And and Lonzo, it'd be nice if Lonzo Ball could remember how to make a shot too, right? Like that was kind of a ballyhooed move in the offseason that hasn't necessarily panned out the way they'd hoped so far.
Yeah, he started off hot, just generally with his play, and he's really cooled off since then.
Yeah, and Dean Wade is a guy with a proven track record of making shots who's shooting like 30% from deep this year, so he'll get better. And hey, Jalen Tyson's been a nice story. I really like what I've seen from Tyson. Liked him last year, didn't get to play very much, but he's putting up shots on pretty good volume, making almost half his threes. he's been playing starter minutes recently. Even when he started a few games, he came off the bench most recently, but he's been playing 30 plus minutes almost every night. And I think he's kind of the likely successor to that starting role if they do end up demoting Hunter for the long term. And I think he'll do really well there. He's a much better defender, and he has been shooting it much better. And he's also a great offensive rebounder. So we've talked about offensive rebounding a lot tonight, but I think that's something that Tyson can kind of bring that the Cavs don't really get a lot of from other places. So there are reasons to be optimistic about the Cavs, but I have been burned a lot. There's also a lot of reasons I think to be pessimistic. And so I'm just I'm not confident that they'll get better. I think they will. I hope they will. Not 100% confident anymore.
If it doesn't get better soon, to your point, this take is going to look really bad. So it's time for our and one. I needed to find a way to objectively take both of our takes and figure out which one was best. Because I didn't want to just be in control of it. I didn't want to just be the czar of the takes. That doesn't seem fair.
It's very noble of you.
Thank you. So I asked ChatGPT. What was the better take? So I entered your take and I entered my take into ChatGPT. It said the hotter take that would lead to viral clips was Cade being a top 6 player, but it is risky and risks credibility.
Oh no, I hope I didn't just ruin your podcast.
It's not my podcast. I'm worried about.
I just killed RealGM and my own credibility. Yeah, that's bad.
In one take. It said Cavs over the hump is good for debate, nuance, and season-long relevance. So it actually said that the Cavs over the hump one was a better podcast take, but that yours was the hotter take that had a better chance of going viral. In the spirit of RealGM Radio, based on ChatGPT, my take would win. But I gotta tell you, screw the spirit of RealGM Radio. Let's go. This is the first time I'm doing this. Let's go hot take viral clips. We need this thing to take off. So we're going Cade Cunningham, top 6 player next season. Also, because I agree with you, I like it a lot more. Would have been different maybe if I didn't agree with you, but I do agree with you. Mike, you're the winner of Good Take. The and one is yours.
Thank you. And so no thanks to ChatGPT. Never liked you anyway.
We're going to Gemini.
That's right. Copilot, where you at? So, all right. Well, here's what I can do then in a spirit of generosity. I had 2 takes lined up, and I will let you pick which one you'd rather debate. Does that seem fair? Because I had 2. This is teamwork here. Yeah. So one is that Tyler Herro is currently the best player in the 2019 draft class. Right now, that's the player you'd want to have in a fairly starry named draft class, right? And then the other one that I like is that a team of all Jalen's, however you want to spell it, would be the best team in the NBA if they were the 31st team right now.
So we're going to put them in Seattle or Vegas?
Oh, Seattle. Total tangent, but I'm just not excited about an NBA team in Las Vegas. They're inundated with sports. They have too many sports already as it is. I like the fact that it's a nice neutral site.
Nobody is not excited for the Seattle Supersonics to come back.
I don't know
who the Vegas team is for, other than a money-making machine for the league's owners. When I even include the people who live in Las Vegas who don't seem that stoked about having the Raiders or anybody else right there. So I don't really know why we're putting a team in Las Vegas. It really does seem like the league, by putting one team in Seattle and putting one team in Las Vegas, is trying to do the aspiration apple tree thing, where it's we're going to build this giant arena, but we're going to be carbon neutral by buying a bunch of trees. It just feels like, hey, we're going to do the right thing by putting a team back in Seattle, but then we're going to put the team that we want in Vegas. We're going to make a bunch of money, and then we're going to karma clap this thing by putting a team in Seattle and making things right. That's their aspiration. But
it seems like
let's put the Jalen team. I'm interested in both. Just give me quickly the roster of the Jalen team, and I'll tell you if it could beat the Thunder.
Yeah, real quick. This is a legitimate depth chart that makes sense from basketball perspective, okay?
Okay.
Point guard, Jalen Brunson. Like we said, somewhere between the 6th and the 10th best player in the NBA, and probably closer to 6th than 10th.
Yep.
Shooting guard, Jaylen Brown, quietly putting together a down ballot MVP campaign on his own this year. Not only has he upped his scoring, he's upped his efficiency. That is he's done amazing this year. Small forward, Jalen Williams cancels out with the Thunder, let's just say, right? But he's getting back into form a little bit now.
So Jalen Williams plays for both teams?
Yeah, we're cloning. We're not taking one from the other. We're cloning, right? Power forward, Jalen Johnson. who has been a triple-double machine. I thought he was an all-star last year. He's definitely going to be an all-star this year. And just kind of like does some very unique positional things that would make him a challenge, I think, for the Thunder specifically if they want to roll out a Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hartenstein double big lineup. And finally at center, you got, Jalen Duren. And coming off the bench real quick, you have Jalen Suggs. Jalen, who's been amazing this year. Like when he's been healthy, he's been shooting the lights out, and he's still one of the best defenders in the NBA. Jalen Clark, who's another one of the best defenders in the NBA, even if no one knows him, but watch some more Timberwolves games and watch Jalen Clark. He's frightening on the ball. Jalen Green, we haven't seen much of him yet this year, but we know he can score and he'd be great coming off the bench. Jalen Wells, the 3-and-D guy from Memphis. And then we'll take the Thunder's Jalen Williams as a backup big man. So they'll cancel out too. That's it. And I had to cut Jalen's. There's a lot of good Jalen's in the league right now. And the depth, the versatility, you got shooting, you got defense, you've got stars, you got everything. I think that team would be unbelievable.
The Seattle Jalen's is a good roster. The Super Jalen's, the Seattle Super Jalen's. I'm tempted to bench Jalen Williams and move Jalen Suggs into that starting group for the two-way play. That against that Thunder team, I need to space him out a little bit. I know that sounds crazy, but I just, for fit purposes, I almost I kind of feel like that starting group needs a little bit more shooting. But they're probably Jalen Suggs and Jalen Williams are probably similar shooters. But Jalen Williams is just going to take more mid-range shots than Jalen Suggs is going to take. But
Suggs is willing, and he's been very accurate this year, so I'm into it.
That's a good team. I still think the Thunder win.
Yeah, they got Shea. They got Shea.
And they also have two of the Jalen's on the team, plus Shea. Let me hear your 20. So let's go Tyler Herro here. I think you're right. And I think what's really interesting about this too is who in the heck would be the second pick if you were going to do a redraft based on the way that you asked.
So I'm so glad you asked.
Give it to me.
So assuming that you mean who would you pick right now, given everything that we know about them going
injury
forward?
History, off the court stuff, games played, contract stuff, all of it.
Here's who I would pick second, and there's a long list that we can talk about. I think second might be Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which people might not expect. I don't know that people have really paid too much attention to what he's done in Trae Young's absence, but he's averaging 20 points a game, shooting 39% from deep on pretty high volume, and 60% true shooting. So he's not just jacking shots, and he's being paid $15 million a year for the next 3 years. So he's on an absurd contract for a guy putting up the numbers he is. Plus he's a very good defender. He's he has shown he can scale up his scoring to be kind of third best offensive player on a really good team, maybe second best on the right night. And he's always going to fit in sort of a Derek White defensive way. Right. So I'm really impressed with him. I think he fits on a team. He's dirt cheap. Your other candidates are going to be Zion Williamson, who's, look pretty good, if not peak Zion when he's played, but he's played 11 games. John Morant, who is, it must be noted, shooting 36% from the field, 47% true shooting. And like Zion and like Darius Garland, is getting paid $87 million over the next 2 years. RJ Barrett, quietly having a really nice year, but he's only played 17 games. But at RJ Barrett, I am always surprised every year at how much better RJ Barrett has gotten than the year prior. He was a very mechanical guy, very slow to read and react, I think, initially in his career. And over time, particularly last year when he had to play a lot of sort of pseudo point guard, he's really gotten better at the playmaking aspect. He's perfectly capable of scoring with the ball, but he's pretty good, moving around off the ball and just scavenging for points. Just very productive player, perfectly serviceable to good defender. Barrett's really improved a lot, but and then Darius Garland we've talked about with his toe, and he's shooting 36% from the field, 49% true shooting, also on a max rookie deal for 2 more years. And Tyler Herro gets so made fun of for that time a year or two ago when he was I think I should be in the same conversation as guys like Luka and John Morant and Trae Young. And he's in my view, he's definitely better than John Morant right now. I think he's probably in the same tier as Trae Young. Tyler Herro is also a bad defender, better than Trae Young. He's way better than shooter than Trae Young. Trae Young is obviously way more gifted of a passer, better playmaker, etc. Maybe Trae Young, you can be this guy can definitely be the number one dude on a winning offense. Whereas Tyler Herro, I think he kind of proved he could do that last year to an extent. Well, not to that level, but yeah, I think he's in that tier. And then Luka, that's obviously a totally different level of player. But yeah, I'll pause there.
I think the best way to do this is to do a really quick redraft of the lottery.
Oh, okay.
Because you've got the guys who have just worked, like Tyler Herro, other players like a PJ Washington, who's he's solid, right? Just a good player. Rui Hachimura, just a good player. Mm-hmm. Kobe White, even though he's been hurt a lot for this season, just an overall good player. And then you've got like what really makes this interesting is you've got the Zion, Ja Morant, Darius Garland thing where when they're on the court, clearly the best 3 players in this draft. But they're off the court so much that because of their lack of availability, that's what makes this an interesting debate. So let's go ahead and posit that Tyler Herro is the number 1 pick. I'm going to assume that it's your take. You had the first pick. You're taking Tyler Herro. I would my first instinct was to go RJ Barrett with the second pick because I'm with you. I think he's really good. I'm going to go Barrett with the second pick. No disrespect to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, as great as he's playing. I just feel like I've got a little bit more of a track record with Barrett. I'm just slightly more comfortable going there, even if I think
totally.
Walker's been a little bit better this year, but Barrett's been really good to your point. So I'll go Barrett, number 2. You have the third pick then.
Yeah, Barrett does remind me. One thing I forgot to mention with the Cavs stuff too is like they would look so much better if they just didn't play Toronto. They're 0-3 against Toronto for some reason this year. And if you take those 3 losses away, suddenly we're like, oh, yeah, Cleveland, not too bad. So you're taking Barrett. This is one of those things where like I've got the closest thing we have to a steady state star right now in Tyler Herro. So if you want ceiling, you probably still have to go Zion. That's tough though. I'm just like at this point, it feels like that injury, the health stuff is, that ship has kind of sailed. So I'm nervous, but I think I'd probably go Zion 4th.
Even with the contract.
2 more years. I think. I don't feel good about it. Let's put it that way. I'm looking hard at PJ Washington here.
Cam Johnson's another one that's sort of lingering over here. Well, you left Na on the board. I'm going to take him.
Yeah. So we're going out. We're just going the whole draft, not just the lottery.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, we could pick from the entire draft, but we're only going to do the top 14 picks.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so Zion's gone. Barrett's gone. Hero's gone. Na's gone. My turn, right? I am going to go ahead and pick. Well, I already got Herro. Garland overlaps with him a little bit much. And, we got draft for need. That never has gone wrong, right? So I'll go PJ Washington.
Yep. Good pick.
Yeah,
Give me Garland. I gotta take a shot here.
Yeah, then I'll. Did we get Morant yet? I'm
Not yet.
Morant, I think, for the same reason. Yeah, I mean, the Zion, Ja, Herro lineup 3 years ago would be just so amazing. But and it's sad to talk about that with guys in their mid-20s.
I'll take. Give me Hachimura.
Oh man, that's what I had to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go. So there's 2 centers I could pick here that I think are somewhat similar, but I've always been more partial to one than the other. So then I'm gonna go Daniel Gafford.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I was right there. So I've got 2 other centers on my board here. Do I need a center? I do need a center. The Claxton fall off has not been great.
Mm-hmm.
Give me
Claxton's not my
Batadze.
guy. Oh yeah, nice. Okay, so now I'm torn because on the one hand, I'm like very tempted by Ty Jerome sitting there, who we haven't really seen play yet at all. On the other hand, there's Kobe White, who's played very poorly this year, but has had a couple good years in a row, and I generally think is like a good player. So I think I'm probably going to go Kobe White. I'm going to go Kobe White.
Yeah, that's the right pick. Give me Cam Johnson.
Yeah, that's a good one. And we haven't even mentioned Jordan Poole, who, by the way, is shooting 32% from deep, 37% from the field.
Won a championship.
NBA champion Jordan Poole. And not like end of bench guy. He was playing like 20 minutes a night then. Although, that was way less than he'd been playing earlier in the playoffs. Who's been playing really well this year? I don't know that I really believe in him long term, but he's really bought into his role. I think I got to go Keldon Johnson.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I skipped right over him. I didn't even notice him. That's a really good pick. All right, give me I wish Ty Jerome wasn't hurt.
I know. Makes me nervous.
I'll be a believer in him. Give me Ty Jerome.
All
Thanks,
right.
man.
And
All right, so
right?
Noticeable guys left out. None of us took Jordan Poole. Neither of us took Nick Claxton. Neither of us took Jackson Hayes. Shout out to Jared Culver for never working out. I was wrong on him coming out of the draft. I'm usually pretty good on the draft. DeAndre Hunter, neither of us took him. Nobody took
Brandon Clark always hurt. Love Brandon Clark's game, so
Yep.
I do want to shout him out, but just cannot stay
If he
healthy.
was
Poor
not,
guy.
yeah, if he wasn't hurt, he would have been an obvious top 5 guy probably in this draft. No Jordan Poole, no KPJ.
Yeah, I need more body of work from KPJ, I think. Although, like, you could argue he's played as well as some of these guys that we took this year and last, but I need a little bit longer than the 40-game stretch we've had of him in Milwaukee or whatever it is.
No Grant Williams, no Matisse Thybulle. I mean, there's guys, but to your point, like, this was a starry draft that inspired a lot of tanking conversation. And if you would have told the New York Knicks while they were crossing their fingers hoping for the number 1 pick on lottery night that the best player in this draft would have been Tyler Herro, I think they would have been okay with dropping to number 3 and ending up with the second best player or third best player in this draft in RJ Barrett. Michael Shearer, Basketball Poetry. You can find it on Substack, one of our favorites over here, and a good takesman. Thanks so much for jumping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.